Tea time. Welcome everybody! Souldin of the Grin brothers here, and it's time for another episode of Tea Time. Now then, continuing with the English tea shop Christmas calendar tea section, which I've just realised actually the little boxes I get of them actually have little pictures on the back of them, so I really should be keeping those boxes. I need to find where I've put them, or I've kind of lost them everywhere, kind of all about the place. In any case, for today's tea, my calendar pick today was Lapsang Blossom. It's a black tea. 4 to 5 minutes is its recommended brew time. Of course, it's from the English tea shop. And the information on it is it's a strong black tea with added vanilla, cocoa, rose petals, and a touch of calendula petals. I have no idea what a calendula is, but there's only 1% of it in this tea. And I've got to say, I'm having this tea with milk. I've brewed it for 5 minutes, and it smells awful. Absolutely awful. Now, I remember enjoying Lapsang Souchong as one of the first teas I ended up trying and really enjoying it, a Wittard selection of it. But then I tried a different patch of Lapsang Souchong from Wittard, and it tasted awful. And at the moment of smelling this English tea shop one, suddenly smells like the latter one. I always thought that my second Lapsang Souchong I had was like it'd gone off or something, or gone mouldy somewhere. But I'm starting to think that my first one was actually the exception to the rule, and I might not be liking the taste of Lapsang. But then again, I'm only judging based off smell, and there are surprises. What was it? Vanilla, orange, and coconut smell awful, and that really surprised me. So, in any case, today's tea time is actually an idea I've brought up before. And I brought it up during the Shantae Half Genie Hero DLC playthrough, where I ended up talking about the new Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, and ended up mentioning how I've been considering making a tea time on my dream Mario game. And I figured, well, okay, I needed ideas, and that's one idea I had. So let's talk about my dream Mario game, or otherwise, basically, what I'd want from a core Mario title to make it the core Mario title I've always wanted. And I think this is particularly interesting, more so than just about any other game I could potentially talk about, because I've already had my dream Mario game. Super Mario 3D World was everything I had wanted for a core Mario game. It's the style of the 2D Mario games in terms of how it plays in a 3D world, so it realises the idea of what traditional Mario went into 3D, rather than Mario 64, which I felt deviated from the pan too much. It has multiplayer in it, and its final boss battle takes advantage of Mario's best feature, the platforming, rather than trying to make it some big epic fight, which I feel that Mario games have generally had the weakest boss battles out of the majority of platforms I've played. So the fact that my dream Mario game, Super Mario 3D Worlds, is technically a thing, makes it interesting to try and talk about how I could have more of a dream Mario game, as it were. So it's more of a case of, okay, this is the Mario game I've always wanted from the platforming side of things. I will say, although this Super Mario 3D Worlds is my favourite platforming Mario game, it's not my favourite game starring Mario, or of the Mario series, because spin-offs such as Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door and Mario Power Tennis are games I'd rank even higher than Super Mario 3D Worlds. But in terms of the core Mario games, Super Mario 3D Worlds is everything I wanted. So really, when it comes to thinking about what would be my dream Mario game, it's thinking of how I would take what I've always wanted and go even further beyond with it. In regards to ultimately a dream Mario game, I'm satisfied with Super Mario 3D Worlds. It's why I don't have ever mind the fact that Mario is returning to the 3D route of 64 and Sunshine and Galaxy with Super Mario Odyssey, where it's more non-linear with objectives and all the different sort of stars or power moons or whatever, or shine sprites. Because, I've already got the Mario game I've wanted. I've got what I've always wanted from it, so I'm satisfied if I never get another one that really appeals to me again in the core Mario platformers. It'll be a shame if there's never another one which appeals to me, but I've got what I needed to be able to accept the 3D Mario games, the ones which people tend to prefer, are just not for me. They're not my games, Like if I had, say, the Legend of Zelda game that gave me everything I've ever wanted, I wouldn't mind if Breath of the Wild was the future of all Legend of Zelda games. But although I've enjoyed Wind Waker HD and A Link to the Past, I never felt that it really captured the absolute finest of Legend of Zelda I could have always wanted. Super Mario 3D World, ticked every sort of box I wanted. But how would I expand upon it? Well, For starters, I guess I would expand on the fact of playable characters. Super Mario 3D World's touched on it in having 4 playable characters, plus the extra of being able to unlock Rosalina at the end. I guess I should also mention that there will be spoilers in this. I'll have had that pop up towards the very beginning about spoilers in Super Mario 3D Worlds, but it's a pretty old game at this point. I figured people would play it, and Rosalina being in it isn't much of a spoiler. I think everyone kind of knew about that. I'd have expanded on the concept, I guess in the way I'd kind of expand Super Mario 3D Worlds is fan service. Not like you're thinking about the ecchi kind or anything. I mean, fan service and things to appeal to the fans, such as throwing content to reference the long history of Mario series. As such, more playable characters. I'd have loved it if I was able to play as, the Wario, Waluigi, Daisy in particular. I'd definitely have taken Daisy over Rosalina, and even some of the spin-off characters, maybe from the Paper Mario series and all that, being able to delve into the Mario series on a whole. Likewise, I would have loved it if the locations referenced more of the Mario series, and maybe actually got a bit more original with it. For instance, the desert world is pretty typical in the Mario universe, but if it was Sarasaland, that would be far more different. One, it'd be a nice callback to Daisy's Kingdom and Super Mario Land on the Game Boy, but also Sarasaland is completely bizarre. The Koopa Troopers are actually bombs which blow up, there's Moai statues, sphinxes, it's, aliens and laser beams and the bugs which can transform into people. It's such a crazy world. It feels so out of place with the rest of Mario. In fact, the Super Mario Land games, the sequel with Super Mario Land 2, the 6 golden coins, I think they did a really good job in making unique sort of levels and areas that don't get explored much in traditional Mario games. And I think that would be particularly cool to be able to have included in Super Mario 3D Worlds. One, having references to the various series, such as, this world is Rogueport, or even Rogueport-inspired sort of thing. Or simply having more creative level choices rather than typical ice-fire sort of world. Maybe combine the fire and ice world. Like, it's an ice world, it sort of like gets on fire in a bit and it's slowly transitioning into a war world for some areas sort of thing. Alternatively, it would be really nice if they expanded on the idea expressed in New Super Luigi Bros. U, where they had one of the stages be based off a painting. And that feels kind of connected to Super Mario 64, how the levels you went into were paintings. And I felt you could do a whole sort of area sort of made up of that sort of concept. I, in particular, would also really, really, really love a sort of world playing homage to the original Super Mario Bros. In it being focused on the brick-based design. Since, after Super Mario Bros., they've since gone with more greenery-based designs for the levels and worlds and such, for that starting world, but I would love it if they actually went with the old-fashioned brick design. I really liked the feel of that, because it felt much different compared to other platformers. A lot of platformers start with a nice greenery-based opening level, but not many start with an area which is just full of, which is all full of urban bricks, as it were. And, I really like that sort of idea, and it tied in well to the plotline. I'd also like a story which isn't so much expansive, it isn't so much grand, but with a little bit of twists and turns to it. For instance, I'd like it if sort of Bowser was the main villain for the story, for the first sort of 7 or 8 worlds sort of thing. But once you beat Bowser, and in the later Mario games, they provide challenge for having further unlockable worlds afterwards, having so the 4 extra worlds unlock afterwards, as has become more standard with the Mario games of late, which I really like that sort of challenge. Core game, easy to beat, but the extra modes have a bit of extra challenge and oomph to them. Have it so there's a bit of story to that, where there's a villain behind the scenes sort of thing, and thus, after you beat the main game, you got those 4 extra worlds, and you get Bowser join your team, and Bowser Jr. perhaps, and maybe Kamek or the other Koopa kids and such. So you actually get to play as so Bowser gets the highlight of being the villain, but then there's an extra story where you get to play with Mario and Bowser on a team against a even bigger threat sort of thing. And I think that would be really cool. It could be an entirely new villain, it could be one paying homage sort of thing, Of course, aspects I'd really like is, multiplayer. Multiplayer is a big thing for me. And I'm not sure if I'd prefer it in a new Super Mario Bros. U style or, a 2D Mario, or if I'd prefer the direction Super Mario 3D Worlds took in making it a 3D world which played like a 2D. I think Super Mario 3D Worlds is what I prefer, but I think when I was coming up with this idea of a Dream Mario game, my basis for it was the new Super Mario Bros. Games, because I've always felt they never lived up to the potential they could have. I felt they could have been, if they're going with the traditional 2D route of Mario games, and particularly as they expanded with further sequels, I felt there was a lot more experimentation they could have done in terms of level design and characters. So feel free to choose how you'd see things in regards to this Dream Mario game that I'm trying to explain, because I'd be quite happy with both, but I'd probably prefer Super Mario 3D Worlds. In terms of, the characters, I'd like them to each have, something unique about them. Not just the really cool factor of being able to have their own unique costume designs, but, each having a unique ability to help set them apart and make it so there's a reason to play sort of with each one sort of thing. I wouldn't do as Super Mario 3D Worlds did and kind of force you to play as every single character to unlock the final level. That's kind of messed up, and it's why I never play the final level, because, that's too time consuming. I barely have enough time to play games as it is. But I think, there'd be a nice sort of thing to sort of maybe some levels which the first playthrough, they kind of suggest you play as certain characters for, these characters are better to get the better time on it and sort of thing. There'd be ways to give you hints and such, but nothing that ever handholds you, Yeah, let's see. Other aspects I'd like. Obviously a lot of callbacks is the main thing. Some new unique power-ups. The cherry power-up was insane in Super Mario 3D World, so something of that degree would be pretty cool. And I really like the idea in the new Super Mario Bros. U of someone being able to create blocks and such, but I think that could work as a pretty cool power-up. I believe Galaxy 2 had something similar in that they had the cloud power-up, but I believe the creation of blocks kind of ties well into the original Super Mario Bros. With the brick-based theming to it. So I think, the creation of blocks would also be pretty cool. A lot of my talk has been about paying homage to a lot of fan service to older Mario games and such, and being able to collect them, have references to all of them, as it were. And in that scenario, I think, if I was going for a plotline, I think something we're doing with time or history would be pretty cool. Maybe even, being able to, like a Sonic CD situation where you have to change some of the levels based off, changing the time period sort of thing. Or again, like I mentioned, maybe even with that fire-ice concept, you can actually end up altering the level yourself rather than it being something of how the level progresses. That's another thing. Donkey Kong Country sort of game, Tropical Freeze, as well as the Sonic games, often had this sort of transition through the levels, which changed the levels. And that'd be really cool if from level to level you kind of see a storyline progressing, which ends up changing what type of level you're playing throughout it. Like, again, Donkey Kong Country Freeze or Sonic, there'd be a forest fire, which turned the nice sort of pleasant forest into a sort of burnt, sort of barren wasteland sort of area sort of thing. And you have to escape the fire. And the next level sort of references that, and it'd be cool sort of that, sort of a storytelling through the level design itself. As mentioned before, Mario is at best when it's focusing on its platforming. So I'd like a lot of the boss battles kind of more emphasize those aspects. Because I don't think Mario games are typically that good when they actually focus purely on the boss battles. That said, with the idea of being able to have multiple characters, it'd be cool to have character v character fights, like old references to the Mario vs. Wario fight in Super Mario Bros. Super Mario Land 2. Would be really cool to be able to showcase. And maybe not even having the characters be essential, maybe having them off in the sides, much like the Captain Toad Treasure Tracker levels. And maybe something like that as well. I really enjoyed Captain Toad Treasure Tracker's side levels. I didn't enjoy an entire game of just Treasure Tracker as much, because that's a lot of puzzle gaming to do. But it was enjoyable when I was taking my time with it and not trying to do it all at once sort of thing. And so Super Mario 3D World had a nice bit of spicing up, having that as a occasional optional thing you can do for a bit of fun, a little break. So I really enjoyed that thing. So something similar to that would also be really neat to have in this scenario of a Dream Mario game. And that kind of sums everything up that I could potentially want a Dream Mario to expand upon. I don't need a huge story, but I'd like more clever, it's just something different from the usual, Peach's kidnapped sort of thing. Again, Super Mario 3D Worlds did this, but then it was the Sprixies being kidnapped. Maybe give Bowser a bit more of a mirth, much like with, I believe, Galaxy, where he was trying to create his own galaxy sort of thing. Give him a bit of a different sort of plot line, but then have there's someone sort of manipulating things in the shadows, so there's an expanded story once you complete the core game. And that's that's kind of what I'd really like from Super Mario 3D's World. A bunch of characters with unique abilities, multiplayer, exciting boss battles that take advantage of the platforming aspects, more in-depth but not exactly extravagant storyline, just something a little bit different. Levels which are a lot more varied and interesting, some paying homage, some transitioning, and that kind of sums up everything I'd like. So in which case I'm going to try out my Lapsang Blossom. Let's see how this goes. That tastes pretty standard. Not a huge fan of the aftertaste. The aftertaste is still growing. The tea tastes nice whilst drinking. It's okay, but the aftertaste I feel is influenced by the smell a bit too much. Like, I'm gonna try actually doing something weird. I'm gonna hold my nose as I drink this tea. Okay, that did not feel good at all to try and do that. But it tastes better once I held my nose. This tea tastes nice, but oh my gosh, this smells awful. And the smell kind of influenced the tea, which is a shame. So, as you're smelling the tea after you've drunk it, there's a bit of a foul aftertaste because of the foul smell. But the actual tea drinking it is pretty nice. I'm not very keen on trying this without milk. I think the milk has kind of balanced it out a bit. Maybe the milk's weakened some of the other flavours, but I feel it may have also helped to make it so that the whatever is making this tea smell bad, that sort of flavour isn't as strong. But again, I'll find out when I inevitably try this without milk at some point. So yeah, that was Lapsang Blossom. And this, of course, was my tea time on my Dream Mario game. Well, a dreamier Mario game because I already got my Dream Mario game. That is so weird that, you know, after all that time I got the Mario game I've always wanted. So, yeah, what would your dream be for a, your ideal sort of Mario game? We're talking about platformers here, because otherwise I could go into the, what my dream sports Mario game would be, or my dream RPG Mario game would be. But here we're focusing on the core Mario games. What would be your dream platforming Mario game be? Is there any Mario game which you feel has actually come close to being, or is actually your ideal Mario game already in some form? And what aspects, and what did you think of my ideal Mario game? Do you think you'd enjoy playing through that? Is it close at all to your ideal Mario game? Or is there a different perspective here on it? After all, again, my thing is I liked 2D Mario games and felt disappointed when 3D Mario game didn't play like 2D Mario games. Which is why I enjoyed it when Super Mario 3D Land and 3D World became 3D Mario games which play like 2D Mario games. But there's a lot of people who really enjoy Super Mario 64 and Sunshine and Odyssey, which are a very different style of 3D Mario games and have become the classic 3D Mario games, weirdly enough. So I can understand if there's a lot of differences in terms of how people view my ideal Mario game here. So, thank you for watching. Feel free to share your thoughts, and cheerio!